Chapter 4 The Cost of War. The first few days of the Polish alliance had been a whirlwind. Coordinating strategies, merging forces, and setting up joint operations, Carter's unit had integrated with the Poland forces without incident, but there was an underlying tension in the air. It was unspoken, yet palpable, the weight of their shared burden. Both sides were fighting for survival, but they were still strangers to each other with different tactics, priorities, and cultures. Carter stood in the command tent, listening to the briefing. Polish and American commanders were bent over maps, discussing troop movements, enemy positions, and the next strike. Carter had tried to focus, but his mind kept drifting. He had seen too many friends die, too much blood spilled. Was it all worth it? Private Carter, a voice snapped him back to reality. He looked up to see Sergeant Lewis standing at the entrance of the tent, waving him over. Briefing's over. We've got a job to do, Lewis said, his face unreadable. Carter nodded, gathering his rifle. He had been expecting this. Orders to move out, to engage. But part of him wanted nothing more than to be left alone, to shut out the horrors of war. Yet he knew that wasn't an option. Outside the tent, soldiers were preparing for the next phase of the offense. The sound of tanks rolling by, soldiers shouting commands, and helicopters slicing through the air filled the air. Carter and his squad were assigned to a forward assault position, rushing deeper into Russian-held territory. As they moved out, the weight of the world seemed to press down on Carter's shoulders. Every step he took felt heavier than the last, the weight of his rifle and armor a reminder of what was at stake. We're making our move into enemy territory, men, Lewis said, leading the way. Stay sharp, we're expecting resistance. Carter adjusted his helmet, checking the safety on his rifle. The tension was thick, but it wasn't just the enemy they were fighting against. It was everything. The fear, the uncertainty, the loss. They advanced slowly, creeping through dense forest terrain. The world felt too quiet, too still. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig had them all on edge. They had been in combat before, but it was always different when you were on the move, when you didn't know what was around the next corner. It wasn't long before the first shots rang out. A sniper's bullet tore through the air, hitting a tree just inches from Carter's head. He dropped to the ground instinctively, heart pounding. The squad scattered, taking cover behind trees and rocks. "Sniper!" shouted Mason from the far side. "We're pinned down!" Carter's mind raced. A sniper could be anywhere, hidden in the trees or up in the hills. He glanced over at Lewis, who was already on the radio calling in support. The situation was getting worse by the second. And then, the air seemed to tremble as a jet screamed overhead, dropping bombs on the hillside. The blast echoed through the forest, knocking everyone off their feet. The sniper's fire ceased, and the squad quickly regrouped. "Move out, now," Lewis ordered, his voice sharp. They advanced quickly, moving through the smoky haze until they reached a clearing. That's when they saw it. Russian infantry moving in fast. They were entrenched, well positioned. It was a fight they couldn't win head-on, not without air support. Carter's squad hunkered down, firing in short bursts. They needed to hold the line long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Carter's rifle kicked back against his shoulder, his mind focused on one thing: survival. The minutes stretched into hours, more explosions, more gunfire. The world was a blur of chaos and death. Carter's breath came in ragged gasps as he reloaded, then fired again. He glanced over at Mason, who had taken a shot to the leg. Blood stained his uniform, but Mason refused to be dragged to safety. "I'm fine," Mason shouted through gritted teeth. "Keep pushing." Carter nodded, his heart hammering. It was a moment like these that defined a soldier, fighting on even when the odds were stacked against them. when their bodies screamed for rest, when they could feel their own mortality lurking just behind them. Finally, the sound of reinforcements, more jets, more soldiers came roaring in. The Russian infantry began to retreat under the assault, and Carter's squad moved forward, securing the area. But as Carter stood there, looking out over the battlefield, something inside him broke. The field was littered with the bodies of fallen soldiers, American and Polish alike. Some were still, while others twitched in the final throes of life. The price of war was never so clear. "We did it," Mason said, limping over to Carter, a grim smile on his face. "We pushed them back." Carter didn't smile. He couldn't. At what cost? Mason didn't answer, and Carter didn't expect him to. The cost was always too high. They had won this battle, but the war wasn't over, and with each victory, the losses seemed to grow heavier.